This is the Shader Toolbox, and this is the base lit shader. This is very similar to URP's default lit shader, but I've re-implemented it in Shader Graph, and there are a few reasons why, but I'll get onto that into a second. If I select the mesh here, and then select the material attached to it, we can see that the properties on the lit base shader are basically the same as those that you see on the URP lit shader. So we have similar surface options, or stuff like choosing between metallic and specular, or opaque versus transparent. I'll assume that you're familiar with the URP default lit shader. And then we have lit properties. So again, this is very similar to the URP lit. The only real differences, I think, are the tiling values that you put here are applied to all of these texture maps, which I think might also be the case in the URP default lit shader, but it's worth noting here. And the other thing is I have a convert from roughness tick box. And that's here because a lot of modeling programs or places online that you can find textures will give you a roughness map instead of a smoothness map. Now, conceptually, they are opposites. So if you take a smoothness map and then 1 minus its results, or its values, you'll get a roughness value, and vice versa. So if your program gives you a roughness map, you can still attach it to the smoothness texture slot here, but you can tick the box and it will 1 minus the values inside the texture, and it will give you a smoothness value that the shader can then use. And the rest of these properties you have probably seen before. If I click lit default for a minute, this is the subgraph that I've created. And it takes in all of these properties, so similar to what you see here. And it will do all the texture mapping that you need to be able to give you outputs such as just the base color, or the alpha, or the normal vector, and so on. And then if I go to the lit base shader, you'll see all we are doing is taking these properties and inputting them to that subgraph, and then getting these outputs back out, which can then be funneled directly into the output stack. And the reason I've done it like this is that I wanted to make it easy for you to just drop this into a shader that you're working on. And then if you wanted to use some or maybe most of these kinds of properties, then you can just feed them into the subgraph and very easily get the graph outputs out and directly tie them into the output stack. But if you wanted to do some pre-processing, so if you wanted to do some fancy stuff with the metallic, maybe it's different based on different parts of the object, then you can do that here. Or maybe you want to overlay an emissive color based on the Fresnel light, or maybe based in a grid line in world space. Then the rest of the properties you can just input like this, but then maybe the emission color, you'd do something different there and just do some calculations, put that into this slot, and then very easily get colors back out. The other thing you can do is do your own calculations and then ignore some of these outputs. So if I wanted to calculate my alpha in some weird way, some special way, based on my material, I could do that over here, and then output that to the alpha, and this part of the calculation inside the subgraph won't need to happen. So it's mostly here for convenience. That was the lit base shader. Thanks for watching.